Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Combat Room MMA. Today we're joined by Adam Primetime Posener in the studio, two-time BFL welterweight champion. Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, my man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How's your day been today?
Not too bad. Been fairly calm today. Just starting fight camp, getting fight camp rolled around for my next fight. So things are just kind of calm for now. And yeah, no, things are good, man.
So how long do you spend in camp before each fight?
Usually my fight camps are around 8 weeks. So if we're going off numbers and logistics, we could say this is my second week in fight camp. But especially with Christmas and New Year's being a part of this camp, it's kind of starting a little bit slower than maybe normal. But in the new year, it'll definitely pick up, definitely like sparring wise. But in terms of like the way that I'm training, I'm still training this full 8 weeks as normal.
So, with this past week and next week with Christmas and New Year's, how have you been staying focused? What's your schedule been looking like?
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't do too much this Christmas. I visited my mom's cabin out in Hope, BC, which is kind of more, I guess, up the mountains in British Columbia. So definitely that was nice to do for a couple days, but I was still training, right? I found some good jiu-jitsu gyms to go to, so I spent time training out there, and the rest of the week I'm still, doing my normal things and trying to get training in whenever I can possible.
So, initially, how did you get started in MMA? How did that process start for you?
Yeah, I've just kind of been around it, like I've kind of done this for a long time. And, I started out competing in jiu-jitsu tournaments as a little kid. And then after a while, I kind of fell out of it, right? Like I took a bit of a break from competing. And then when I got back into it, it just wasn't, my motivation wasn't quite the same as before. So then I started doing like these little like MMA tournaments, or they call them pancration tournaments, which is basically like mixed martial arts, but except it's one round and it's like full sparring gear. So it's like headgear, shin pads, all that. So that was a nice little experience builder as well. And then after a couple of years of that, then I graduated high school, and then about a month after graduating, I booked my first amateur fight, and here we are. The rest is history.
What age did you start from, like, training each different martial arts?
Oh, I've since I was a little boy, I'll say that I was a little boy when I started out in this whole thing. So, uh, you could say like probably 5 years old or so, maybe a bit around that age, give or take. But I started again, like I started competing around age 9, and then once I was 13, that was when I did pancration tournaments, and then at 17, I had my first amateur fight.
So were you around sports a lot as a kid?
Yeah, no, I've kind of been around. Sports were always my thing, right? Like as a kid, I was doing martial arts for most of my life, and then when I kind of not necessarily stepped away, but like took a break from it, kind of explored other things, right? I was always into like other sports, football, basketball, a little bit of hockey, a little bit of soccer occasionally. But yeah, no, mostly like after that little stint of those sports, I realized that mixed martial arts was for me.
So, what were you planning on becoming before becoming an MMA fighter?
Uh, I mean, to be honest, I didn't really. MMA was just kind of it, right? Like since I was 11 years old, I wanted to be a UFC fighter, and I was always told growing up that I should have just went to university, or graduate high school with good grades and go to college or university out here, and then try and find a job with that. But that kind of wasn't the life that I wanted for myself, right? I knew that I was capable of doing what I wanted to with my life, and what I wanted was MMA. And again, like I say, it's kind of just how things are unraveling. It's going pretty well for myself.
So were your family not initially very supportive of you becoming an MMA fighter?
Absolutely. No, they're they were both fighters, right? So
Oh, okay.
they yeah, I know. So they both did this a long time themselves. So they understood that when I said that I wanted to do this, they were fine with it.
So what martial arts did they come from?
They came from they both did MMA mostly. They did a little bit of other things like Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu as well. And then yeah, no, like I said, they're just kind of MMA was what they ultimately came to. MMA was their ultimate goal. So then I kind of said, I'm like, let's give this thing a go, and it went pretty well.
So do you think you were gifted a lot naturally if you manage to make it 6-0
Yeah,
as an
I
MMA
mean,
fighter.
yeah, I mean, definitely, like that's what a lot of people say. But again, like when the cameras are off and no one's, when no eyes are on you, right? It's the training that I do myself. I show up every single day. I don't miss a day, right? I don't rely on, any gifted talent or anything, right? I show up to the gym. I improve my skills. I improve physically, mentally, all that, and I think it shows in my fights, right? I feel like every performance I've had is, a little bit of a better version of myself, and I think I'm just going to continue showing that. And at the way that's going, I think that's going to be a successful career.
So who pushed you the most earlier on in your MMA career, or even now?
Like pushed myself, like as in, oh, like who is in who, like motivated me the most, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Honestly, like a lot of people growing up always, were saying that, I'm going to be the one to do this. And, people I've grown up with, that people that I've known for a long time in my life, they will be able to tell you that I was meant to do this. And they'll always say, like, there's no real direct answer that I can give you for that, because it's kind of everyone that I've been around for my whole life, right? So people that I've grown up with from, high school, elementary school, even people that I met after high school, they all tell me to keep going. And, it's just I like proving people right, and that's what I'm doing.
so do you think your environment, made you who you are as a person?
Absolutely. No, martial arts is my life, right? Without martial arts, I wouldn't be who I am, or I'd be a shallow of myself if it wasn't for martial arts, right? Like all I do outside of, MMA is, because again, on the regional scene, right, we don't make crazy amounts of money. We're not making Conor McGregor money. So, um, again, like outside of martial arts, you still have to, you know, have a career for yourself, and martial arts has done that for me, right? I teach classes at a couple different gyms. I teach one-to-one private lessons, small group private lessons, and I sell my own primetime merch line as well. So between
Yeah.
those things, it's given me a good life, and I'm able to achieve what I want to do.
So what's martial arts taught you?
Martial arts kind of taught me that, that again, anything's possible for me, right? Like it kind of gave me that something to go for, right? I didn't want to just go in life and just be like, just another day of, just living regular life, right? I knew that life wasn't really for me. I didn't want to, wake up at 7, right? Get ready for an hour, go to work for 9, finish at 5, and then, you have your evening for yourself. But because again, like it's just a never ending circle, right? And for me, it's like, I've got what people have told me is such a huge goal, or something that's, very, in some regard, unrealistic or unattainable, was that, you know, I'm just out here that I wasn't going to be able to do it. And, that I had to go to university and all that. But again, it taught me that it gave me a purpose for my life, and something that I can aim for and strive for to be better.
So you're a regional MMA fighter right now, so how do you support yourself financially?
I support myself financially. Again, just, a lot of coaching, right? I coach at a couple different gyms. I coach private one-to-one private lessons, small group private lessons. And again, whenever fight time rolls around, I'll be selling merch. The money will go to more towards my fight camps. I have a couple sponsors that help support my fight camps. Shout outs to them. And then also when I'm outside of fight camp, I always try and take extra coaching opportunities when I can. So, like if it's a seminar, I'll always take those, because again, anything to help make financial life outside of fight camp easier, then it will make my financial life in fight camp easy. So then I can put more time into my fight.
Living in Canada is expensive, innit?
Very, very. It's terrible,
You
but
know, from your first MMA fight to now, how do you think you've evolved as a fighter?
oh, I've evolved so much since that fight, right? Again, like my first fight, from between competing in jiu-jitsu and my first fight, or the pancreation tournaments and my first fight, it was like a 2 3 year layoff, right? And again, I was focused on other things in life as well, right? Like I was in high school at the time, so again, I was partially focused on that. But yeah, for my first fight, I was definitely like, I look back at it and I've evolved so much since then, right? Obviously physically was one of the big things with my body because again, as a 17-year-old, you're not fully developed physically or even mentally to some regards, right? Because you're fresh out of high school and you're still trying to figure out what you're doing with your life, right?
Yeah.
But once a couple of years went by, I felt that I really started coming into my own yet. And I'm starting to feel that now, right? I'm starting to come into my own. I'm starting to come into my element a little bit more, and it definitely is just helping me, you know, evolve to the next level so I can improve every time out. And I feel that skill wise, physically, mentally, I've gotten so much better since that first fight.
So, how did you prepare yourself mentally before your first fight?
My first fight, I didn't. I honestly just went there and just kind of fought, to be honest. And again, that's not what you want to do for your first fight. Generally, you want to, think about how you see the fight going. How do you, what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the best thing that can happen, right? And when you break all those things down, that's kind of one thing that I've learned over time is seeing those outcomes. And once you understand those, then it makes fighting a lot easier, right? And my first fight, I didn't really understand that. Hence why I was probably super nervous for like the whole day. So, again, learning experiences, and 3.5 years later, whatever it is, here we are.
So, when you won your first BFL belt, what went through your head at that moment
My first BFL belt. Yeah, no, my first amateur BFL belt, or as a pro.
as a pro?
Pro, yeah, it was a crazy moment for me because again, as I was growing up, I've been around the fighters that were fighting for those titles, right? And for me to finally have one of those on my shelf, the one right over me here,
Yeah.
um, it was a surreal moment, because again, that was my first time going to decision as well. So, and again, it was a very tough opponent with a lot of momentum. I think I was like a 2-1 underdog in that fight, so that definitely was cool to overcome, for myself. But yeah, no, it was a surreal moment for me, and it just showed that I belong with the best, and I'm just gonna keep climbing and keep getting better.
So, you're 6-0 as a fighter, does that pressure get to you sometimes?
Honestly, not really. A lot of guys say like, there's a lot of pressure on them, but honestly, like I don't worry about the record or the stats or anything, right? Every time you step into the octagon, anything can happen. So the fact that I get to go out there and display my mixed martial arts skills means a lot to me. But also on top of that, it's like it's again like, you know, you go in there, you're 0-0 every time, right? Max Holloway talked about that on his when he was on like that crazy 13 fight run was you can be on a 13 fight win streak, a 15 fight win streak, or whatever he was on at the time. And every time he stepped in there, it was 0-0, just trying to get to 1-0 as a fighter, right? Every time he's did that 13 times in a row. So that's kind of how I look at it is again, does the record doesn't matter. Let's just win on fight night.
So, even though you've never lost officially, what fight do you think taught you most about yourself
What is
or
that, sorry?
pushed you? So, you've never lost officially as a
Yep.
MMA fighter, which fight do you think taught you most about yourself or pushed you to your limits?
Yeah, definitely that Zach Powell fight pushed me to a limit, right? Because again, there's a lot riding for him, right? If he beat me, he would have got on the Contender series this last season. So definitely, I knew that was going to be my toughest fight, and it was, right? So it was a good fight, right? I think I showed a lot more of my skills that I talk about, right? I showed a little bit more of my potential, and obviously since then I've improved a lot more. So now that kind of looks like a shell of myself, but again, that fight taught me a lot, is in like what I can overcome, and that I'm meant to do this.
So, was there ever a fight where you felt like, you might lose it, whether you were scared of
Uh,
losing?
No, honestly, like, loss is just a part of the game, right? Win's a part of the game, loss is a part of the game, right? And the truth is, whether you win or lose, people remember for like, 15, 20 minutes, and then they're always talking about the next fight, the next card, right? They're no one ever sits and remembers that won or lost a fight, right? So even when I won my last even two title fights, right? The feeling lasted for a very short amount of time, and then people forget and they go back to doing their normal life. So again, the result doesn't matter to me, right? The fact is, I just want to go out there and just display my skills and to show how good I really am.
Is there a particular fighter that you look up to as an MMA fighter?
I like Islam Makhachev a lot. He's really good. I think just the way that he came up, right? He started out as a bit more of a pure wrestler, and then had again he had a hard time getting matchups. So then he spent that time to get better with his submission game, get a bit better with the striking, and he really just evolved into an incredible fighter. So definitely, that's a guy that I like a lot.
So, how do you plan on getting onto the Dana White Contender series? How does that whole selection process happen?
Yeah, so as far as I'm aware of, they just kind of reach out to you. That's against what I know of. But right now I just got to get this fight on February 19th done, and then I'm gonna maybe apply for because I know there's an application process in March, I believe it is, for the Contender Series. So I think if I win in February, apply in March, I think that's a pretty good little timeline. Um, so yeah, I think if they'll just reach out to the promoter of BFL, and then BFL will reach out to me, send the contact info over, and then we'll kind of get that matchup, figured out.
During your training camp, week by week, how does it change up until the fight day?
Honestly, most of it's just the same, right? The first week or so is just about again just getting used, just getting things in check with each other, right? Making sure that the cardio is holding up, and make sure that what we've been working on is applicable, right? So like any new skills that we added, we're getting those into the game, a bit more drilled into the mind for the first 2 weeks, and then about 4 or 5 weeks or so is just again trying to push the cardio, trying to get the cardio as good as we can, make sure everything is in tune with the body. And then fight week rolls around. It's just about making weight. And then once you make the weight, it's time to fight.
So, do you ever practice new moves or anything leading up to each new
Always.
fight?
100%. Always. I'm always learning new things. I'm always getting better every time out. It's something that I always try to work on as a martial artist. There's no such thing as perfection. And again, when you get complacent, that's kind of where things go south. So I've never gotten complacent with MMA. I always want to try and get better. I always look at ways to improve. And again, that's kind of how I've just kind of rolled around with this.
So in the gym, how do you how do you train differently compared to other people, as an MMA fighter? Is there any
Yeah,
particular
I
exercise?
think I always try and just think about getting better, right? Every time I just think of new ways to get better. I try not to just stay in such a like a limited. I don't try and limit myself pretty much. If you limit yourself, then that's where things kind of again go south, right? You get complacent, right? Then that's where people start to figure you out, and then that's where your career can sometimes flip on its head is people figure you out, and then people know how to beat you, right? And again, one thing that I've done really well is I've improved technically so much in between fights, and that's why I feel like I'm going to be a problem for anyone in my way.
So you're always evolving as a fighter.
100%, man.
For each fighter that you fought, how do you prepare for them?
I always try and look at like what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are my ways to win, what are his ways to win, right? And I kind of devise a game plan around that, right? I always try and think what's my opponent gonna do to me that maybe I haven't seen before, and that's what we try and address, right? Because if we can shut down my opponent's best way to win, and I can start implementing my way to win, then the odds of the fight going well are going to be pretty high.
Even though you do try preparing your best, was there ever a fight where everything just went wrong, in the octagon?
I mean, yeah, I don't know if it didn't necessarily go wrong, but um, one fight that I didn't necessarily get the best preparation, or not I didn't feel the best about was my first fight on Samurai. I wasn't super happy with that performance. I felt that again, a lot of things went into it, right? It was like a 2 week notice thing, right? Like I was trying to get on a battlefield card in September of 2024, and again after looking and looking and looking, I was couldn't get an opponent, so I was kind of in training camp, but kind of wasn't, and then I got the shot on Samurai, and then again a bunch of other political related things that kind of made it a little bit difficult that night, kind of threw things off. So I'd say if there's anything that I wasn't super happy with my performance, it'd be that fight.
Why, what went wrong?
Yeah, like, well, for one, I feel like one big thing was the 2 week notice, right? Because that was my first fight, taking it not on a full camp, pretty much.
Yeah.
So definitely taking it on 2 weeks notice, and again against a very tough opponent at the time, right? I was, I believe, 2-0, and he was 1-0, and he was like a 4-1 amateur as well. So very tough opponent. He was from a very good camp, and yeah, no, like I said, like I felt I didn't perform up to my abilities in that fight.
So, how many amateur fights did you have before, you felt like you could make it pro?
I had 5 amateurs before I turned pro.
Or was that 5-0 as well?
Yeah, 5-0. Yeah, 5 finishes.
So, you know, if you have a loss, how do you think you'd handle that since you never lost before? Because,
Honestly, I don't think about that too much. Honestly, right? Like again, the feeling of win and loss, it's so short lived, right? And even when I've won fights, I haven't really like, you know, it's not like it's a crazy different feeling like, the world's gonna erupt, right? Like it's not like, the moment I leave my house, there's gonna be cameras on me, right? So it's the same kind of idea with a loss, right? If you lose, right, sure, it's gonna suck for a day, but then after that, right, you go out normal life, right? You're just a normal person, right? It's like when I leave, for example, when I leave my house to go somewhere after I win a fight, it's not like everyone's like, oh my God, right? I'm just a normal person in normal life. It'd be the same thing after you lose.
well, if you do make it to the UFC and, you do start getting a fan base, do you think that you'd have to change that approach?
Yes and no, right? Obviously, but again, like unless like you're Conor McGregor level status, then
Yeah.
it's not gonna make that world of a difference. But again, even if you did get to like the UFC level and the world knows you, right? People are gonna forget anyways, right? They're gonna be focused on the next fight. They're not gonna be dwelling on you losing a fight, right? That's just how
I
MMA
think
fans are.
I think with, some UFC fans, they forget how good the fight is based off one loss, that Justin
Yes, but
Gaethje fight
they're
was,
not gonna remember though, right? And if they do remember, then they're not MMA fans. They're just people that are just trying to, draw attention to themselves.
yeah.
That's just me though, right? Like if if you lose a fight, right? People are always gonna think what's the next fight, right? There's always fights after that people are going to focus on. They'll be like, say hypothetically, there's a group of 3 guys. They watch you lose a fight. They're going to be like, oh, I thought it was a good fight, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, this next fight between these 2 guys are going to be really good, right? So people are going to be talking about the next fight more than just that one loss.
So, how do you push yourself through injuries and setbacks or just on days you don't feel like training? There's something that particularly pushes you.
Yeah, there's always days that you don't want to do it, right? But again, like it's one of those things that if you don't want to do something, then it's like, what are you doing? Right? I've devoted my life to this, and if I didn't feel like if I quote unquote didn't feel like training, then there's something wrong, right? And if as for an injury, right? If it's just work around the injury, right? If you can't do certain things, don't do those things. Do something else, right? There's always things to do, unless you like can't walk or something.
Yeah.
Then sure you can take the time off, but otherwise you can. Oh, there's always ways to work around an injury.
So, going back to the Dana White Contender series, it's to get yourself a fan base and all that, or get yourself a big hype around you, do you think you'd have to change your persona on the series?
Sorry.
Do you think you'd have to change like how you present yourself in the series, to make yourself more memorable?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just being me, right? I feel like I've got a decent name out here in Vancouver, BC. Like in the fight community, I'm very known, right? I've been around this my whole life. I'm very known in the like most gyms in the Lower Mainland know of me or know me literally, right? Most, and I'd say like a good amount of MMA fans are starting to know me, right? I feel like after my last two performances, that when I fought for the BFL title and defended the title, I feel like those two fights really skyrocketed my popularity, so to say. Right now, I feel like I've got a bit more of a name, and people in Canada already know who I am. Right, Montreal even knows who I am because I fought there twice now. I've had two good performances. I got two finishes. I got a submission of the year in 2024 for Canadian MMA, so that's pretty cool. Um, so
What
yeah,
submission
like
was it?
I got an armbar at the end of like right at the end of the fight. Like I was up 2 rounds. I was pretty much up on most of the fight. I was fighting actually a very dangerous opponent, and I knew that again striking with him was probably not my way to go because again he had very good striking, good hands, good kicks, good knees. So I knew like I had to be on top. I had to stay on top of him and not let him go. Right. And for the first, most of the fight, I was winning. I jumped a bit of a premature submission, and then I was on my back for like about the last 30 seconds, and he was trying to throw on me. I was blocking the shots pretty well, and then I chucked my leg over his head, and I got the armbar right at the end of the fight. So, um, yeah, and also I think that definitely helped as well.
So, for the Dana White Contender series, how does it work to get the contract into the UFC?
You just got to have a good performance, right? You need a performance that Dana White's going to be like, wow, I need this guy in the UFC,
So
right?
is it
Like,
so is
sorry?
it all just based on one fight?
Pretty much, right? Like your regional fights help you get there, but once you're there, that's the only fight that matters.
So, if Dana White said, would you like to secure your spot on the thing, would you play it safe and just grapple, or would you, stunt the back?
I would get the finish, whatever it is to get the finish. That's how I roll, right? Again, mostly on the most part, I've fought striking based fighters or boxing based fighters. So again, the submission's been the route to victory for most of my fights, right? I haven't fought a really, really high level wrestler or a really, really high level Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioner that I've said, okay, grappling's not the way for me to win. I need to strike. I haven't had that yet. And that's okay, right? That just means that my wrestling, my jiu-jitsu are on that caliber that it's probably going to take until the UFC to get someone to challenge me in that regard.
So how big of a step up in competition is it from, regional MMA up to the Dana White Contender series?
I try and take the toughest fights in the regional scene, right? I feel like I've taken pretty tough fights on the most part, right? Maybe the honestly, like even the guys I fought early in my career, sure they're not UFC caliber, but it's my first pro fight, right? My first pro fight, I fought he was 0 and 0. Like I was 19 years old and he was 20 years old, so he was a year older than I was. He was a 4 and 0 amateur, all finishes, I'm pretty sure, and he was making his pro debut, right? So on paper, that's not a bad stat, right?
Yeah.
The second guy I fought, he was he had 8 fights, and he almost beat one of Battlefield's top fighters. Right? He almost knocked him out. He ultimately got knocked out, but it made it very competitive with one of Battlefield's top guys. So going into the fight with me, he still had a big name uh, against me, and I was able to throw him. And then as I kept climbing the ladder, I started fighting guys that were better and better. And here I am, again, still fighting another legitimate opponent.
So, do you think you've been outclassed, like outmatched on paper on every fight, but you've still managed to come out with a victory?
No, I'm never outmatched on paper. I mean, I think on paper, I think my skill set is very good. I just haven't delivered it yet, right? And again, that says something, right? The fact that I'm 6 and 0 and I'm still not delivering up to my full potential, and I know that, right? Guys that I've trained with know that I've got a lot more skills to show than what I've been showing. So again, like really, even in my even the fight I won the title against, right? The guy should have on paper been able to stop my wrestling. He should have been able to outstrike me, but neither of those things happened, right? On the most part, I outstruck him. I was able to out wrestle him. I was able to out grapple him. So again, my skill set's very good, and a lot of people don't even know it yet.
So, getting into the UFC and the the type of fighters there being way more skillful, do you plan on changing MMA gyms, or would you still train at the same MMA gym
Um,
to progress
I'm
yourself as a
open.
fighter?
Yeah, no, I'm open to switching gyms. Like open, I'd probably split my camp realistically. Like maybe I would like go to, one of the gyms in Vegas or one of the gyms outside of Vancouver just to change things up, right? So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of that.
So, one last question before we go.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you want fans to feel when you watch their fight?
Sorry?
What do you want fans to feel when they watch you fight?
I want them to know what high level martial arts is like, right? I want them to know like, that again, if you commit your life to something, you can be very good at it. And I just want to be living proof of that, right? I was told that I should have just, gone to college or gone to, get a regular job, but here I am, you know, 6-0 undefeated fighter, about to make it 7, about to make the UFC, and we're just going to keep climbing the ladder.
Thanks so much, Adam,
No,
for giving me the time for
of
giving me
course.
the
No,
time to come on
thanks
the
for having me on your
podcast.
show.
And I'd love to interview you once you win the Dana White Contender series.
Always, man. 100%. 100%.